if it starts to spoil and it heats up, then you get spontaneous combustion in there. Oh yeah, it'll catch fire. So that's the granule that exploded. Because of that, the material wasn't
Okay, I'll call the Board of Selectmen meeting to order for 7 o'clock, 7:02, Thursday, January 17th, 2019. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any additions to the agenda? I do have an addition. Last night at the Board of Finance meeting, the continued funding of the Charter Revision Commission for recording secretary was denied, so I'd like to put that on the agenda. The vote not to fund the recording secretary. So I move we add discussion of charter revision as agenda item 10B.
So you want to unstart?
I want to unstart. Is there a second?
Well, just unstart it then. Don't add it twice. Just move to unstart it and
all right. I will do that. I move to unstar the discussion of charter revision, item 10B. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Okay. And I move to approve the special meeting minutes of January 3rd, 2019.
Second.
Discussion.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And now I'll introduce Terry Hahn. She's from LADA Land Planners, and Terry's heading up a $130,000 project that the state has given us funding for. And the project is called Stormwater Management and Village Center Redevelopment. So
I've been here before, so I just wanted to come back. Again, my name is Terry Hahn. I'm a principal of the LADA PC Land Planners. We're landscape architects and planners. We are the consultant for the town for this grant. The grant is, as Bob said, for the combination of stormwater management and village center redevelopment as it relates to Warehouse Point. Specifically, the grant was originally put in 2016 and then applied for in 2017.
I'm going to turn down the lights.
Okay. And then was granted, we'll go through timeline, but the idea was when the Plan of Conservation and Development was being done, there was a Warehouse Point master plan that was put together as part of the Plan of Conservation and Development, and had some really great ideas. But everyone through that process came to realize that Warehouse Point has one physical difficulty, which is that the stormwater runoff and the flooding associated with the Connecticut River will have an impact on future development for Warehouse Point. And given the proximity of the casino location, the train across in Windsor Locks, Warehouse Point is primed for some long-term transportation or transit-oriented development and just general increased levels of development as a preferred location. It was also identified during the Plan of Conservation and Development as one of the places where the overall public was interested in seeing additional development as a mechanism in which to take some of the pressure off the agricultural lands in the eastern part of the town. So this grant was applied for and given, and we are now in process. As I said, we've met with, there was an official kickoff meeting when Lori was still here, and then Lori left, and we were trying to get things moving along, and now Ruben is here, and we are in the full-blown activity associated with the grant. So we had some original meetings back with the board in September. We've met with planning and zoning a couple of times. We've met with the highway superintendent, and we're currently in the part of the project which is known as data gathering and inventory. So the way that works, in order to make that happen, is we updated the base map that we were using from the Plan of Conservation and Development and the original Warehouse Point master plan. There were some new aerial photos that were taken by the city, the state, and we also expanded the scope of those plans. We talked about where the watershed actually was associated with Warehouse Point, and did in fact conclude, I think similar to the discussion that we had with this board earlier, that it does go all the way up to Prospect Hill. It doesn't include all of that section of Route 5, but it goes up to Prospect Hill, comes back across, and that there are properties along that Route 5 corridor in between Route 5 and 91 that in fact have pipes that go across 91 and then into Warehouse Point.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
In the paper was handed out,
Yeah.
the thing you gave us a long time ago.
Sure.
You have schedules in there, but they're not dated schedules. What they are is 1 to 4 weeks,
Correct.
you know,
Yep.
and so on. Is it possible that you could put in the projected calendar schedule?
I can do that now.
If you
When we
could,
first started, I would have said that we could not, but I can do that now.
it would be very helpful.
It's not a problem, because what I would anticipate is that this process will take us from now and with a final report in December of this year.
Yep.
So we're looking at the first series of public meetings, or first public meeting in probably beginning of April, and then a follow-up one in September-ish.
When we first talked in November or whenever it was, you handed this document
Yes, I
out, and I looked at it, and I looked at it again just this past week. And I understand that when you're starting, you really don't know what any of the end dates are. But it would be, for example, in the data gathering, you said 1 to 4 weeks.
That was item number 1.
That was item
specifically
number,
that
yeah,
one,
1.0.
Right, that one's been completed, or parts of that have been completed, so we're in between things.
I see it, that was
Yep.
completed.
Yep.
But as I said before, just in order to make it easier for me to understand,
Not a
I
problem.
would sure appreciate it through some dates.
Yes, I am prepared to do that at this time.
Okay.
Yes, it's much better defined. Plus, you'll see, we found some things that caused us to delay because there was data that wasn't available that we've been generating. So
Could you send a list of those to Ruben or to Bob or somebody so we can get our hands on the daily schedules?
Oh, yeah, I will send it to both, and then you guys can
great.
circulate it
Thank you.
and keep it track. Yep. Yeah, because it quite honestly, it's better for me to have calendars and deadlines.
Yep.
So that way it doesn't creep too much further. So that's good. So we've done that base map update and are in the process of doing data gathering and inventory. The topics that we are interested in for this include everything from soils, flood limits, where the parking is that's available. That's all related to impervious surface, so we were able to do that. Wetland maps, and one of the things that we came into an interesting, we're putting together a map that's called the existing stormwater facilities. And this was a map that is part of the requirements for overall for what they know called the MS4 requirements, which is a stormwater program that the DEP requires all towns work with. And some of that documentation was in pieces. So one
And the
of
purpose of that program is what?
the purpose of that program is for the town to be aware of its stormwater facilities. Specifically, it was set up originally to have the town identify any, what they call illicit discharges, like if somebody had a footing drain from a house into a town catch basin, to try and make sure that the stormwater projects, the stormwater facilities aren't over capacity in
Is
any
the town
fashion.
obligated to monitor that?
They are, yes. The town is obligated to take care of that program, monitor that program. There are different levels of monitoring, and you guys are kind of at the first level of monitoring.
And how do we do that?
The highway superintendent put together, or was in process of getting some of the data to put together a map. In some towns, you'll notice that they went to the next level and they did the annotation out in the field. So you'll see squares in front of catch basins on the pavement where they painted the square. Sometimes they'll have a triangle indicating that there's flow going in different directions. So they've gone through and they've identified all the catch basins throughout town and are aware of what's going on within those catch basins.
Do you have to take a sample from some of those catch basins?
Not at this time. The town is not required to do that at this time. There is, however, some requirements. For example, if you were doing any project or if you had any town project that went over 5 acres, you are required to do stormwater sampling associated with that. And there is a deadline coming up soon that does require that the town report from certain specific locations, but you're not in that program.
By sampling?
Correct. And all you're sampling for is TSS, you're not, which is total suspended solids, which is not an extensive sampling list. So it doesn't require, you can actually do that. I have a handheld machine that I use myself for when we have to sample for our clients. So it doesn't require lab work. It's not an expensive program.
I think Lenny was before us last year and said they did physical inspections.
Well, who did?
Lenny,
Mhm.
you know, from
That's my
Director
understanding. They
Yeah.
did do physical inspections,
Yeah.
but they didn't really quite get to is taking all that data and put it into a map.
Okay,
So one of the maps that we are preparing will cover that requirement for the warehouse point.
right, okay.
So we've got an extensive facility where we've gone through, checked out all the catch basins, figured out where the pipes go, where it discharges. We need that information for our stormwater watershed evaluation. So this map will be, get you into compliance for warehouse point.
It was my understanding though that when they did the whole town because there's some state or federal requirement to do that.
Yes, that's the state, what they call the MS4, municipal storm sanitary, storm sewer.
Okay.
The 4 refers to how many S's are in the word.
Okay, okay.
That's what that is required. So this documentation will help Len
Okay.
in his documentation.
Okay, good.
Okay, so that's under existing stormwater facilities. As we're doing that, we've also spent a considerable amount of time in the area looking at the blue ditch. Okay, if we go back, stormwater runoff in Warehouse Point, pretty much set up where some of the properties just go directly to the Connecticut River, but the rest of the properties end up this way and this way. You can see this little white line through here that shows the topography associated with what is known as the blue ditch. The stormwater all comes into the blue ditch and then eventually goes under 91 and discharges on the south side of the 91 bridge and looks.
In that low spot?
There's a pipe.
In that low spot?
Yeah.
Just south of the bridge?
Yes. Yeah, there's actually 2 streams that come together
Yep.
and discharge into a 72-inch pipe. Len already has a project that he's got a hydrologist looking at the nature of that pipe itself and to see whether or not that pipe should be bigger or is got something going on. So what we're looking at is everything from 91 back, okay, associated with the stormwater. What we've done as part of this project is spend time during storms and low flow areas, document the blue ditch itself, where it is, what it looks like, what the storms, for example, here, this is January 5th, 2019, last week, before. There was a 1-inch rain event. We were here during the middle of that rain event. And this is the beginning of where the Blue Ditch daylights. It actually starts on the other side of the Geisler's Plaza through the wetland there, actually gets into a pipe, goes underneath the wetland, the Geisler's parking lot, and then comes out and daylights here, which is the...
So it goes south under Bruce Street?
Yep, goes south.
Near the firehouse someplace?
Yep, yeah, the firehouse is here. This is then going up towards Gardner.
And is the Blue Ditch, is that typical of it? It's
No.
really a defined ditch?
It's different places, different circumstances. So what we did and what we walked the Planning and Zoning Commission through earlier this week or last week was an analysis of sort of what it all looks like. What it really does is it's a channel that opens up into a wetlands, which then goes into a less channel, which then goes across Main Street. And there's a channel in there, and it, as you know, it floods in the ball fields. Second storm. Yes.
Yep.
That is correct.
Sorry.
Yep. So, and then it goes, winds its way around the wastewater treatment plant and into a culvert and then into a defined stream channel, goes underneath South Water Street and then out. So, but we did a presentation of the whole, sort of giving you pictures and descriptions. What we were looking at was how what you see, and obviously as residents, you see this all the time, how that relates to the data that we can gather. Inch rainstorm, the height of the river, and then how that relates to the math associated with drainage calculations, so that we have all of that information together. And we're able to show at this point, best that we can see right now, although the calculations are confirming that, is that when we have a storm, the water runoff from Warehouse Point comes through the Blue Ditch and out to the river a good between 6 and 24 hours before the river crests, okay, before the rise of the river. So the stormwater associated with Blue Ditch happens way early. And there is actually some flooding circumstances that will happen with a 1-inch rainstorm over by at the ball fields, where it jumps the bank.
Yep. If the river is very high in flood stage,
yep.
Will the Blue Ditch then fill with water and back up
Yes.
toward the center of Warehouse Point?
Well, it won't go that far.
No.
But we did have a circumstance in one of the storms that we were here, where at the end of the storm, you had a little bit of flow coming through the Blue Ditch all the way past Main Street, and then about halfway across the ball fields, it stopped. And what that was a backwater and a fill-up from when the pipe is underwater.
Okay.
And it did, in fact, go underwater. Show this? There we go. On December 23rd, we had a 2+ inch rain event, and the pipe, you can see this is, I was using this as a nice visual when you drive by, so you can see sort of what happens. We were up at the 3rd post at that emergency access. The discharge of the Blue Ditch is on this side over here. And this was underwater. And so the entire pipe, actually this went all the way up to elevation 20, so the entire pipe and the whole stream bank, the whole river bank was underwater. So we've been able to see what all that means and what it looks like. So we are able to, once we get all the pieces together, we'll be able to look at opportunities for how to address stormwater associated with Warehouse Point. One of the things that recently happened, just as an example, is that the river obviously does its own thing. Okay? And there's very little that we can actually do to control or change that circumstance. So the other day during this week, we haven't had any rain for 5 days, 6 days, so it went down to a lower level. And then 2 days later, I think it was Monday and Tuesday, the river actually went up another foot. Without any rain here, without anything that had anything to do with us, it was obviously coming from upstream. So those flood conditions, okay, are not related to the stormwater conditions that are associated with Warehouse Point. So that's an important sort of difference. So the question will be, is there anything we can do for a stormwater perspective that would potentially help help or change or do anything associated with flooding? The answer is mostly no, but there may be some things that we can do. That's the next step of what we're going to be looking at.
Has the blue ditch been there forever,
Um,
or is it something relatively new?
I don't have a good answer for that. The 34 aerials all show something similar. I think that it probably has become more defined with Main Street keeps getting higher. And there was a point where I think it probably flowed a little bit differently prior to the Main Street getting higher. It may have done something different before 91 came into existence.
Many years ago, you know, I guess probably the last time was in the 50s, the river flooded very badly, and it came across South Water Street. In 1938, and that code tells how old I am, it actually flooded all the way back to the center of Warehouse Point. The main fish market, which at the time was a confectionery store, was actually, would have been underwater. It came up to the porch deck, so it was like,
Okay.
you know, like, I don't know, like maybe foot and a half deep through that traffic light intersection there.
Okay. All right, well, that's pretty high. Right now, the current flood elevation is approximately elevation 35. So just to give you an idea, Water Street is generally at 28 and 30 elevation. So if that did in fact occur, you know, you're talking about.
So that was 7 feet of water beyond South Water.
Yeah. So that's pretty much reflected in the topography. The current flood elevation is approximately a foot or so above the previous flood elevation that was established long, long ago, and it was changed in approximately 2015. So some of the older plans show flood elevation at 34 instead of what is now 35. So when you go through some of the old site plans in the files of planning and zoning, they'll have a flood elevation, like for example, in the back of the church, that is slightly different. So that's there's just trying to get the information that you see and you know with the data. We're trying to get that all blended together so it makes sense. So that's kind of what happens there, just so that you know.
Looks to me like they dug out that ditch.
Yes, Glenn did recently do that in the fall.
That was a 1-inch storm, and all that water coming down from 91 area, that handled that pretty damn good on a 1-inch storm.
Well, that particular ditch is at Bridge Street.
Yeah, I know where it is.
Yeah, so you know, it's actually doing. You're right. It does pretty well, and it flows really. It flows through without too much difficulty. Where there are wetlands, obviously that's a natural place where the water's going to jump the
Down
banks.
at the ball field, used to be tobacco on that one low spot behind the ball field actually, and behind the house, and that was always wet in there anyway.
Yep.
You couldn't farm it, you know.
And it remains that.
And it's gonna stay that way.
Yes. Yeah, it actually has a defined stream in there with a cross-section with various different tiers showing at regular flood elevations. So back in December, we did show the whole thing was full with jumped its bank and had another 2 feet of water back there. But typically, what it will do is it jumps its bank just on the north side of the ball fields and then goes back into the wetlands area.
The reason they called that the blue ditch, if I recall, is because they used to dye fabric in that Keystone building there. And the dye would run into that ditch. It would be running blue, different colors. That's why I got that nickname, the blue ditch.
Well, at this point, it does show up on the FEMA maps and a few other of the old sort of regulating
That
maps.
was years and years ago.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, pretty much looked at, or we're in the process of finishing up those existing stormwater calculations. We've started the existing watershed map, and now we're just breaking it down into pieces so we can look at what we might be doing for under individual properties to make things happen or general areas.
So your study includes the fact that if the casino comes, there'll be a substantial amount of impervious surface that will shed water much more rapidly than what's there today.
Yeah, the whole project sort of revolves around impervious surface. Because not just the casino, but let's say we, want to do additional expansion of buildings and parking and things along Bridge Street. That addition of impervious surface, what should we be doing with it? And that's going to be the trigger. The issue of everything between 91 and Route 5, one of the things that we're looking at is whether or not some of that stuff ought to be rerouted. And what impact that might have. There's always consequences when you try to move water from where it's currently going. So right now, when they put this, the exit ramp in here, as opposed to where it used to be, there was more water that actually went on the south side watershed of the Blue Ditch as opposed to the Warehouse Point side. So there have been consequences, and there's some increased water in those changes over time. So one of the things that we're looking at is, I'll bounce back and forth, what kind of things might we be considering? We're not quite there yet, but we're starting to think, what alternatives are we looking at? Should we be looking at bigger pipes? Should we be looking at rerouting water? We're not quite there yet, but those are kind of, should we raise the buildings up? Should we be looking at more facilities for stormwater, less facilities for stormwater? What should we really be doing? So those are the sorts of technical questions that are going to come into play as we get not through this first step and into the next one.
What do you mean by raising up the buildings?
Well, one of the things that is a sort of standard practice in floodplains, and within your own floodplain regulations, the idea is if you do any renovations or you're building within the floodplain, we try and get the finished floor elevation of the building approximately a foot above the flood elevation. Okay? Now, some things are practical, some things are not, but that is sort of the standard flood regulation, and that is what, in fact, your flood regulations are. So what does that mean? What would that be? We've seen it on some of the coast communities where what they're doing is parking underneath so that the water goes underneath and whatever's under there is what you lose, but the rest of your house is still standing. There's certain things. Whether that's practical here or not, that's...
Okay, I understand that. Like, along the shore they did that.
Yep.
They made that a requirement amongst other things. But I thought you were referring to existing structures.
Well, the question, of course, is whether or not those existing structures, when they want to come in for renovations, do they have to do this? What would it mean? Can we encourage that? Do we want to encourage it? Is that, what? These are questions, not answers at this time.
There's one house there that was extensively renovated 10 years ago.
The one
on a corner.
Right, yep.
And I have no idea whether this influenced it or not, any regulations or requirements, but whoever renovated that did a really fine job.
And
They actually lifted the whole foundation, the whole house up in the
Yes.
air before they renovated it and put it on what looks like a cement block foundation that's up probably 18 inches, 2
At least,
feet
yes.
above where it used to be.
Yeah, yeah. So that is an example of somebody who was sort of paying attention at the time, yes, yes. But those are kind of ideas. I don't know what's going to come of it, and believe me, we will be in front of you to have that actual discussion. I'm not making any decisions, without input, but I'm just sort of throwing out some of the things that we might want to talk about.
That is something that's currently lacking in town, a definition of what you do if you're going to renovate a house. The question as to what you do with the foundation, that is not currently addressed. Is that correct?
Well, there are floodplain regulations, but based on my conversations with planning and zoning and the planning department, no application has ever been processed underneath those regulations. So that maybe, and it's not just Warehouse Point. There are lots of other flood zones within the town. So it is something that I think we just need to pay a little bit more attention to.
Okay.
It's just that state and federal officials are actually looking more into it, with the changing climate and all that, because there are implications in terms of values and, what people pay for particular properties and what they lose. So You know, the state, federal is paying attention, state pays attention, so they're like, you know, we need to consider these in terms of future development and redevelopment. So that's what we're doing.
Right. It's actually a little ahead of the curve. So that's, okay, let's go back just in terms of process. We did that. Okay, so what are we doing next? From this point on, we are actually running two ideas that are interconnected and simultaneously. One is the issue of stormwater management, but then the other issue of what redevelopment or future land use might be part of Warehouse Point needs to be considered. So one of the things that we're looking at is to talk about the actual master plan. We'll be asking questions about whether or not you all think that the Warehouse Point master plan is still valid. Is there anything that's changed? Is there anything that you'd like to see added into that or integrated into that, or what that might be? You have the chance to live with it for a little while. Is that still valid? What kind of things do you want it to look like, the new development? What would it look like to actually have to lift those buildings up? Okay? What would that mean? Is that something that we want to consider, what we don't want to consider? We have a series of visuals that we'll bring to you to say, this has worked for you, this is what this means. Okay? And this is something that you think is a good idea, is that you're willing to live with. Then with that, we look at the stormwater, because when you have new development, then you have increased impervious surface, so then we look at what that means for stormwater, okay? And what those facilities might look like, might want to be, might not want to be. And then ultimately create some regulations that would implement that final vision once we figure out what it is that you want it to be. We're also looking at, in order to accomplish that, within the grant, we have site plans that we can do for specific locations that would be identified through this process, so that we could look at, basically it's a little bit of free design work for the property owner and what we might be able to do, and glean from that, for example, maybe a maximum impervious coverage number that might get integrated into regulations that we can use for future stormwater calculations, things like that. We do have public input sessions that would be scheduled in order to talk about some of these things, and then we would start to look at some of the options for stormwater, which we already talked about. You'll notice down at the bottom, rerouting runoff. Okay? That Route 5 really means the casino, it means Big Y area. There's a couple of pipes that I think used to go a different direction, but now they go through Warehouse Point. North Main Street had an interesting scenario where some of the water on North Main Street goes towards the agricultural fields and the river, and some of it actually gets routed back to the north and then back down through the Blue Ditch, the beginning of the Blue Ditch. So looking at that headwater area might be helpful, because that might relieve some of the water that's coming into the wetlands before it hits the pipe at Geisler. So there may be some things that we can do. But
So you might be able to alleviate the load on the Blue Ditch by routing water directly to the river north of the center of Warehouse Point.
north and south, yeah.
Yeah.
But again, we have to be careful how we do that. When we start doing wholesale watershed movements, then we also need to coordinate with the DEP and just understand what the consequences are.
And then retention ponds are another way, aren't they, to store the water so that you can dissipate it?
Yeah, well, what the retention basins do is they actually slow the process down. And we might not actually want to do that, because you try to avoid by slowing the process down, and that means that the volume and the peak takes more time to go through the Blue Ditch. So if your stormwater peak runs through at hour 6, and the river doesn't come through, the peak of the river doesn't come through until hour 12, holding it 6 hours later means that now you have a bigger problem.
Yep.
Okay? As we get through, after the first public input, we start really looking at solutions. We want to identify the options that make sense to the town, what makes sense for the area, develop a future conditions, stormwater calculations to reflect that, to make sure that the ideas that we have actually work, okay? That they'll do what we intended to do, and then develop plans and regulations that reflect those ideas, which are likely to be stormwater, additions to the stormwater regulations that you already have, changes or updates to the floodplain, some streetscape guidelines for Bridge Street, how we might want that to look, some design guidelines for the future development, and new zoning regulations or updates to the existing zoning regulations. The zones in Warehouse Point, there's a whole mess of zones in Warehouse Point, and they're the same zones that are also used elsewhere. We might just want to Warehouse Point, you know, I'm not, Ruben and I just started having this
May I
conversation.
make a recommendation?
Yeah.
Before your public meetings, information meetings, would it be a good idea to put together a simple 2 or 3 page fact sheet you can hand out to the people who come to the meeting, so
Sure.
that they can look at it while you're talking and they can walk away with something,
Sure.
so that they can give consideration to it later?
Sure. That's fine. Yep. We also will, prior to doing to the public, we'll also come to your board and planning and zoning and run the public presentation with you first, so we get some feedback, see what works, what doesn't work, and hone that.
I think you'll get better feedback if you give them something, and if we ask them to respond in hard copy or by dropping it off to town hall, or those
Sure.
who have a computer, input it to some database that Ruben has or whatever.
Not a problem. All of this comes to a head for the final report, okay, which includes everything that came before. Plus, in particular, it includes update to the stormwater regulations, what the recommended facilities might be for future development. Do we want retention? Do we not want retention? We only want water quality. Okay. Do we want to, for example, consider something that's more a bigger, more multiple properties might be able to share instead of one property at a time. Properties in Warehouse Point are fairly small, so you would need to aggregate them. So to do stormwater on each individual property could be quite difficult to do any improvements, and that would make sense. Again, I'm just throwing stuff out there. These are the kinds of things that are in the back of our head as we go forward. Nothing is decided. Okay? Update to the regulations include recommended streetscape improvements, cross sections. I know that as part of the original Warehouse Point master plan public input sessions, one of the things that became very clear is that people did not want on-street parking on Bridge Street. It was very clear. Okay, if there was one thing that everybody agreed on, it was that. So that way, but what we did talk about is adding a bike lane or doing something that would connect with work that the state was already thinking of doing a bike lane on the bridge. That's part of the reason why we were connecting through, or down South Water Street or something of that nature. So those things start to become recommendations, ideas, cross-sections, details that can be used for future improvements. That will then also, the final plan and that, which is, I would say, an expanded expression of the master plan, and will be called the future density and uses plan. So it's just it's another step, because the master plan is set as part of the POCD. This would be a follow-up. Other questions, thoughts?
I guess the north side of Bridge Street along the river.
Yes.
Now, I hardly remember, exactly what that looks like. Is that a big area there before there's any residential housing or any housing there?
When you go on the south side, there's a house right at the bridge.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of opening, and then there's 2 more houses.
Mhm.
On the north side, there's an open area, and I think there are 2 or 3 houses still on North Water Street, on the river side. I think it's 2 houses on the river side.
Okay.
But that is, after that, there is then nothing else on the, between the river and Water Street. Those are the only, well, you got Volunteer Park.
Yeah, and I was kind of thinking, along the river, just thinking all the way up there is no marina along the river.
Correct. Now, one of the things that had talked about was where a possible access point would be. In general, my first reaction is it would be on the north side because the south side all has a substantive bank.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, it's just difficult to get
Right.
down there.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah, but on the north side, it does not have that.
Yeah.
It is much closer, you don't have as big of a bank, it actually tapers up to the vegetated area.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, it's a lot easier access. And I'm pretty sure there's an informal path there now
Mhm.
that somebody's using and taking the boat in and out of, but nothing fancy, nothing official.
I mean, that might be something we could.
That would be great.
We could think about, you
Yep.
know, as something for the town to, you know, as a point of interest, people with boats, because a lot of people have boats, and, you know, to take them from there down to the shore, I think that would be pretty good for business, you know?
I'm not sure that you can,
Shallow, Charlie.
yeah, I don't think you can get to
Only about that
the,
much water in there most of the time.
Is it?
Where is that, north of it?
North of the bridge.
The
even south of the
Enfield
bridge.
Rapids up there too, you know.
You know, there's not much water.
So there's not much water in the water?
Water.
The warehouse
Pretty
points
well.
fireboat, I've been out in it on the south side of the bridge, and it was actually the outboard motor was hidden.
Okay.
There's no water in there.
Plus
The
you
little
can't-
channel is way over on the Windsor Lock side.
and it's not navigable
It's not
to
navigable.
to Hartford, because you just north of Hartford, north of the boathouse is a sandy, sand, what they call the sandbar.
Okay, bad idea.
Yeah, no, no, I think it's a good idea, but my suggestion would be, we're talking about canoes and kayaks.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, that's really what you're looking at.
We have a lot of riverfront.
Mhm.
We don't utilize it very much at all. Volunteer Park is probably as close as we come to utilizing the riverfront, and that's only a couple hundred yards long. I just don't know, I've been back here in a long time, what it looks like, down behind St. Philip Church, for example, and Southern Auto and so on. But my recollection is it's kind of a lowland, and I think it gets flooded down that way.
There is
If you get
floodplain that
If you
continues
get
down
so
to
much
those
off of
areas.
the river at all.
Yeah. Yeah, you also.
We don't use the river here in East Windsor to any advantage at all, particularly in Warehouse Point area. It would seem kind of nice with the development that's going on in Windsor Locks, that if we could come up with some neat idea where we could, I don't know, build boutiques or whatever it is, and in a protected manner along the river, it might just bring people across
That's a great idea.
the bridge to visit our town. We don't do that.
Sounds good.
I don't know if your study will investigate that at all.
We can, the part of this would include, a designation on the map as where something like that might occur.
You have to understand, elevations
Yep.
and what's practical.
Yeah.
I didn't realize what Dick said, and that is that there's no water in the river on our side.
You can get to the river much easier over here. Can you see where I'm pointing? Okay, over here. But I think your limit is pretty much bridge to bridge, more or less. I think you can get a little bit upstream a little bit, but there's a,
That's why Warehouse Point exists, because that's as far up the river
Right.
as they can come.
Right.
They unloaded everything and took it to Springfield. There's a reason for it.
Well, they actually took it over to the canal,
Well, that's before the canal was
and
built.
they used to pull the barges up the thing with horses and mules up towards Enfield, where the water was smooth again. And
Get it over the
barges,
rapids,
They
yeah.
could go again, you know?
but I think canoes and kayaks would make a lot more sense.
Walk right across that summer. Don't need very deep boots.
But that's where we're at. We
Thank you.
are working piece by piece. We have a lot of data, and we're just pulling all the pieces together. The next time I'll be in front of you is just to go through all those existing conditions maps and to start to talk about what happens next.
When do you plan to come back?
Probably in about a month. Is that okay?
A
In
month?
about a month? Yep. So like the end of February would be great.
We turn the lights on? Okay, well, thank you.
Any other questions or anything? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I got a question.
Yeah.
When all this comes to a head, who's gonna pay for it?
In terms of,
Well, when if it comes in where you gotta put all these extra, bigger pipes in, and who's gonna pay for this,
well, one of the things that's interesting about this particular study is there does seem to be some grant money and things available for what they call climate resiliency. And the blue ditch is really one of those things that would qualify. So part of the reason why DECD was interested in funding this is to see how the next step happens. Some of this stuff is private property, any developer who would be interested in doing things, then they have they would participate under those newer regulations, but things like changing of pipes, that usually that goes under the town, gets some of that grant money to do some of those sorts of things. But it's anything where you have new improvements, that's the next question, is how do you pay for it?
Because the people on Water Street, I've seen the water up to the second floor on those houses. And it goes down, they go in and they rip everything out and they do what they gotta do and they move back in. Those people don't have a lot of money. And for them to have to comply with all of this stuff down there, they'd be better off burning their house to the ground and getting out. Because they'll never be able to afford to do it,
Well, I think there's some real concern about, the existing property owners and how what happened affects them. One of the things that many communities are experiencing is a significant and unexpected increase in flood insurance. Trying to get a bank loan, trying to get a mortgage, and what that would mean. And all of a sudden, understanding what the flood insurance costs are going to be. I think no one has said it, and they're not heading in that direction, but the issue of how many times an insurance company pays out. That is, somebody else is going to make some kind of decision with respect to that. But I think it is a concern to DECD for any of the towns up and down the river or on the shore. And what that means to property values, property ownership.
Thank you. Very good.
Okay, is there any communication? I do have some. So, last week, someone or two people from the Trolley Museum came in, and they gave me this letter, and I'll read it. It says, attached is revision 0 of the Vegetation Management Plan for the Connecticut Trolley Museum, which is submitted in accordance with the requirements of the state Connecticut General Statutes. Per the statute, this Vegetation Management Plan must be submitted to the Chief Executive Official or Board of Selectmen of each municipality through which the railroad operates and maintains, as well as to the Connecticut Department of Transportation. The Connecticut Trolley Museum is committed to its obligation to maintain its right-of-way in accordance with both the state and federal safety standards. Vegetation management is an integral component of those safety efforts. Should you have any questions concerning this vegetation management plan, please feel free to contact myself or President Rob Brogel via the museum office. And so we had a good conversation. Ruben was there. I left the room, but and they're going to have Gina, the marketing rep, meet with us. We might go down there to take a look at the Trolley Museum. Also, this vegetation plan is on the website now in the Planning and Zoning Department. So it was required that it be posted, so we did post it.
What does that mean?
What? Ooh, go ahead.
Charlie, you were speaking first.
Yeah, what does it mean? Vegetation management plan, basically they're going to put pesticides down or something to control the weeds and other vegetation along the railroad tracks.
So they're going to spray Roundup herbicides on it?
Could be, but probably not. So, but they'll do. But that's why they have the management plan. the state looks at it and approves it, so it's not, and they're making us aware of it too. Yeah, okay.
So it doesn't mean they gotta plant a rose bush every 25 feet or something?
No, it just, that the state now is saying you have to have a vegetation management plan, and they got one, and the state approves it, and the state's also saying you gotta give it to the town official, your vegetation
All
management.
right, so they're not getting a lot of government regulation burden put on them. It's
No, they
just
said they're
about
doing what they always
just
do.
taking what they've always done,
Yeah,
basically.
they hire a firm to do this vegetation management.
Oh, okay.
So,
I think one time, Bob, they actually, when the Nike site was active, there was there were a group of military people who were there, and they were very helpful to the Trolley Museum. They actually designed road beds and helped them lay track for a long, long time. And one of the projects they had at one time was to go through mechanically and remove vegetation. They didn't spray herbicides, they may this time, but they actually went through with hand saws and chainsaws and whatever, and cut away the vegetation that was going to bother the vehicles traveling back and forth on the tracks.
well, that's good, yeah, they were saying they got about a mile of straight track down there now, and they also have right-of-way that comes right down to Broadbrook.
Bottom of Church Street.
Yeah, and they actually have right-of-way across the Scantic River too, where the old, I guess, the bridge abutments are still in the river, kind of falling over, and they could actually have it would have to lay a lot of track, but they could lay track to the east side of the river, and there's kind of a park area that's owned by the state that you could use there. So.
They had grand plans to do that at one time. There are two old trestle, there were, I'm sure they're still there, two old trestle.
Like a sewer plant right there.
Near the old sewer plant.
Yeah.
That fell into the river when it was used as a mode of transportation, when the trolley tracks were used running between Windsor Locks and Rockville. They came across the river right there and ran up into the center of Broadbrook and out Depot Street. No, it ran up Broadbrook, up Main Street, and out through Melrose,
Yeah.
along Route 140, all the way out into Ellington and into Rockville eventually. And the trestle traversed the Scantic River at that point in time. They were going to stand that back up again, or pour new ones, and as you said, create something on this side of the Scantic River for, I don't know, for parking or whatever.
Well, but that's still plans that are
That's
way
right
off.
there. I think they want-
But they'd like to do something like
I
that.
remember when I was younger, I remember seeing the Army in there putting down tracks.
Oh, yeah.
It was either the Army or National Guard, I don't know.
It was the Army.
They had on uniforms, you know, it looked like the Army in there, you know, laying them down.
Military operating.
At the old Nike site.
No, it was in Middletown.
That came up here and did it? The Army Corps of Engineers? Is that where they came from?
It's not Corps of Engineers.
They,
Military railway operating.
They worked at it for a long time, didn't they?
They did, and then they went to Middletown and worked on the railroad from there.
Do you say anything about the Iowa safety?
Yes, they did mention
Because
that.
they want to rebuild the Iowa safety in Hartford where it was. Does that mean that they're going to take that one back?
Now that I don't know. I kind of got the impression that they were going to build the Isle of Safety here, but you're saying they're putting it back
Well,
in
the
Hartford?
building is here now.
Yeah.
But it needs a lot of work.
I think they might get a grant to refurbish
that?
it. Yeah.
The tile roof mostly needs work.
Yeah, but they had, it was in the news a couple weeks ago that they want to build the Iowa safety back the way it was in Hartford.
really?
Yeah.
I didn't see
What
it.
agenda item are we on?
We're on communication. Now, I got another piece of communication.
Lay it on us.
All right. This is from, it's addressed to Barbara Sherman, and it's from Lori Giannotti. And it says, and this is about a grant, because Barbara reapplied for the rest of the money for the grant. So it says, Barbara wants me to read it, so I'm going to read it. Thank you for taking the time to submit your request for funding. The Connecticut Greenway Council, as assisted by DEEP with an incredibly difficult grant selection process. As you may know, $3 million was allocated at the end of July by the State Bonding Commission. DEEP received 73 applications for these funds, making it the most competitive grant round yet. $3 million to distribute. There were over 12 million in requests. Requests from the highly ranked proposals alone totaled $4 million, though the CGC was able to fund most of the highly ranked proposals. We were not able to fund yours. So, American Heritage River Commission didn't get any money. Okay, so I'm through. I'm through with communications. Now we can go into public participation. Do you have anything want to say anything? Do you want to say something?
I do.
Okay. And state your name and your address, because I know you're not from East Windsor.
I'm not from East Windsor. My name is Armando Nunes. I'm a contractor, earthwork contractor, that has been involved with the site at 20 North Road, East Windsor, from about 11 months ago now. And I don't know if the board, as individuals, know why the project has stopped and why it hasn't picked up again now since July. And I'm not here to rehash and tell you a sob story. It's quite simple, that they haven't paid anyone that's worked on the project. And if they have, it's been within the last week or two. We're talking about upwards of 9 months. With that, I'm simply here as an individual that cares about the town that I live in and respects local politics and believes that you guys should have a lot more say in what and how and who comes into your town. The town of East Windsor has offered a substantial real estate tax break to the developer that's starting this project or hasn't completed it, knowing that that does not trigger for them until they receive a certificate of completion. They have absolutely no rush. I request that the Board of Selectmen review potentially putting a deadline upon that so that they can actually take what they started on this project seriously. For me as an individual or anybody who pays taxes in this town, it's hard for anybody to conceive if they're treating contractors, and it's not just me, and there's over 10 contractors, plumber, electrician, foundation contractors, suppliers, people that provided the toilets, provided the dumpsters, no one's been paid. If they're doing this to local contractors, what do you think they're going to do, or how are they going to treat people that are going to become East Windsor residents when they move in? To me, they're not a sincere company. So if the town will consider that, of potentially putting a deadline upon that gift being...
Did they ever pay any of their bills?
They've started in the last couple of weeks, but we're talking 250 days, 260 days have gone by, and there's still a substantial amount of contractors that are waiting for their money.
They have started paying, have they?
They have.
Okay.
They have, and I'm not gonna lie to you. We're all in communication because of the situation that we're in. They seem to have started picking and choosing and picking off their small bills.
Did they communicate with you people at all as to what their problem was?
Myself, I've been promised at least 3 times a week for the last 6 weeks that the check's coming tomorrow. I've given them wire money information because they've asked of me wire information. It'll be there tomorrow. It'll be there tomorrow, and I get lied to 3 times a week. It's completely honest. They are communicating with me. The other over $100,000 debt that they haven't talked to him in a month. Because we talk 3 times a week. We just happen to be close personal friends. So I don't want to sit here and cry a sob story of poverty. I believe that the residents and this board are entitled to know what snakes you has let into your yard.
What have they said why they haven't paid you?
Well, it's an interesting thing. They have a fully funded construction note, which is recorded in the clerk's office within the town. I checked it myself prior to signing my contract, because I like to make sure that there's money behind the job when we start. That being seen, and understanding that the town believed in enough of these people to offer that tax break, gives me a sense of comfort that this company out of New York State is coming into Connecticut. They got grand plans. They're going to build one here. They're going to build one in Manchester. They're going to build one in Bristol. That, all right, they're funded. East Windsor must have done their homework before they offered $750 million tax break, so I might be okay here. They've gone to the point of actually telling us as contractors we're sorry, we got the money from the bank for the money, the work that you did, the people came and evaluated the performance, and they dispersed funds, but we have money problems in-house, so we can't pay you. If any one of us did that, we'd be in jail, because that's actually bank fraud. That's the simple fact of the matter. To receive funds direct to a construction project or a note and not use that money for intended purposes is quite illegal. So that's the situation with them.
They're gonna have a heck of a time finding people like you who will trust them to do work the next time. Continue the work. You're not gonna sign up
They
for
made
it.
their bet. They made their bet, as far as I'm concerned. And a large majority of the people that have worked on our project have absolutely no interest in setting foot there again. So it's their, I mean, to the point of being brazenly ignorant to the Connecticut DOT that for months I was witness to meetings, I was copied on correspondence that they're going to rebuild, they're going to repave Route 140. The water main tie-in for that project has to be completed before they repave Route 140. Blatant disregard. Ignored, because I'm copied on the emails, ignored Kelly McCain from DOT District 1 for upwards of 8 weeks before anything, until Kelly threatened to pull their permit completely. I mean, even with, on a side note, your building inspector, your building commissioner is one of the most honest, transparent, and helpful building officials I've ever crossed paths with, and I've been doing this for 30+ years. I'm not that old, I've been in business a long time in the industry, so you have a very good building inspector. But he has told them, I need schedules, I need you guys to take care of your water issues there, because it's just a straight mud pit, it has been because of the way they left it, because they didn't pay. They've ignored him. They've not offered him the schedules that he's demanded to commence work again. There's no regard for anybody. And they're showing it in spades. So I ask the board to strongly consider a deadline and to make it aggressive, to potentially withdraw that tax rate. They don't deserve it. I also, because of things that I've learned with these people, I asked the Board of Selectmen to consider, and I'm going to ask my own town this as well, to consider that when a project comes in, a public project, or a private project that impacts the public, as large as this one does, that's over the value of $1 million, that the town asks for 2 things before they proceed through planning board or building department. And you have the right to do this. Be provided a guaranteed proof of funding. Proof of funding in writing, number 1. And number 2, if a project's over $1 million, do not accept checks, company checks, for your erosion control, sediment control plan, for anything. Require bonds, because a check, they could care less. They wrote the check, it's already off their books. You guys cash it, your exposure's done. You have no more of anything to grab. If it's a bond, call the bond. That bonding company will make certain that your wishes are respected. So please, just because of the experiences that we've had that are horrible, just so happen to have been in your town, please see if you can, protect the town, protect the residents you guys represent, protect your tax base, so that these things don't happen again, because it's just disgusting.
What is your
painful for me to be here.
What is your estimate of how much do you think has been spent there already?
Between $1.3 million and $1.6 million, I would say, not including the property. Not including the property. A gross majority of the earthwork's completed. Once you go behind that mound of dirt that you see from the road, all the storm drainage on that part of the site is completed. There's light pole bases in the ground. Half the foundation's in the ground. Half the foundation's been ready to pour. 1 elevator shaft up, which you can probably see from the road. That entire back half of the building's been ready for a slab to be poured since middle of July.
So it's not a walk-away thing at this point?
There's three garages that are part of the project. 2 of the 3 garages, the foundations are formed and poured and backfilled. Or 1 is backfilled, 1 isn't, to be honest with you. So yeah, I don't know. What are they walking away from? I don't know what kind of equity or capital they put into the project themselves. There's a $12.1 million mortgage recorded in your town clerk's office from PNC Bank that has paid, that actually for a fact has paid. I've met the bank appraiser that comes out, And he has told me that they have paid, but that, you know, that and $1 gets me a coffee, that's it. It does nothing. Be careful of these people, whatever it is they ask, push them to do the right thing, or get out and let somebody else do it, because I know that they've had interest in that project because of how it was abandoned. Guys that I'm very well aware of have offered to buy, take over, and complete. No regard, none whatsoever. We're dogs, that's all we are today. So I just wanted to come in and make you guys aware, and not sit here and cry my sob story about X amount of dollars, this, that, and the other thing, but when a small company like mine is owed approximately $400,000 and do not get that for 260 days, I have vendors, my men get paid every week, my benefits have to get paid, and some are, and some of my men have lost benefits because of the money that I haven't gotten, but it's not $400,000 that I'm owed. It's $400,000 that I'm owed, and $200,000 that I have to take from somewhere else to cover. So I'm in a negative, personally, $600,000 because of their negligence. I'm the biggest ticket because I'm the first guy and I'm the site guy at this point. The foundation guy's over 100 grand. Builders Concrete out of Manchester just got paid $80,000 last week without being communicated with for 3 months. They ignored them. Landscaper had to file a lien on the project. I've never had a lien filed against me in my entire life. These guys caused me 2 permanent black guys on my credit record that have liens filed against me. And I wanted to tell them to be very well aware of who you guys let in and be very careful how they proceed with you going forward. And I hope that word gets to Manchester before they break down there and Bristol so that this doesn't happen to other groups.
Okay, well, thank you. I think.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you, and I apologize.
Have you consulted with an attorney?
I have, and the advice that I've gotten is I've got every ironclad case to win. Get your money first, then we'll fight for your losses and your damages, because if you go to court, it'll be 3 years, I'll be closed by then. That's the God's honest truth.
The court system is going to be your remedy for that.
It is for the damages and interest and penalties and all of it, you know. Not going personally pay you, for 5 or 6 weeks and having to, borrow money to pay my payroll. I understand that my court will be the remedies for all of that, but it's not going to be a remedy for all the people that move into that place. And then they have one janitor that carries 3 facilities with 150 units apiece, 30 miles apart from each other within the state of Connecticut. Those people are going to become your residents, so they're going to be looking for you guys for remedy because you got people. I know what my remedies are, but if I don't do everything I can to try and get my prime amount of money, then I'm just never going to see it. It's an LLC that bought that property. It's an odd situation. So the owner is the builder, is the end user. But every single one of them is a different LLC, all in Delaware. They know exactly what they're doing. And it's too bad that it's landed in my lap anyways. Thank you.
Thank you for coming in.
Okay, so now we're on to agenda item B. No star, no asterisk. And just to let you know that in December 20th, we made a request of the Board of Finance to transfer $1,375 to the Charter Revision Commission to fund the Charter Revision Recording Secretary for the rest of the fiscal year. But last night they voted unanimously not to do it. So we don't have any money to pay the Charter Revision Recording Secretary. And I don't know. We'll just have to get by, I guess. We'll see what we can do.
And the reason was?
Well, they did, and we recorded it on the video, which seems to be working much better now. Each person said why they didn't want to fund it. And I did write down kind of what they said. One person said they didn't like the way the committee was put together and the way the committee is run. They've opposed it right from the beginning. Another person said that one of the key things is that every committee or group be in the same dollar amount or area, and that this was in excess. they said, I know they have more meetings, I get that. Well, I do and I don't. So that was that. Another person says, I didn't see much to be impressed with, even though they consented to it. They are not proud of their consent today. And another person said that they had an issue with someone who's representing us in the legal counsel serving on the Charter Revision Committee, and they're uncomfortable with the whole thing, and they're uncomfortable with the fact that the same members who are on the study committee are also on the commission. So that's for the reasons for not funding it. It is what it is. They voted and we didn't get the money.
So it was all personal then, it wasn't to do with the government or the town? Those are personal things.
Yeah, they're different. They're
Not deciding whether there's money or not to do it.
Yeah.
That's what I believe their function is.
I think maybe fundraiser. They'll sell cookies or something. We'll see.
I don't think it's funny. I think that's pretty sad on their part.
Well, I don't want to criticize anybody, but
We're supposed to do a charter revision, right? We're supposed to do that.
yeah, every 10 years, and we're doing it. And I said at that meeting, I said that, is there a document more important to the town than the charter? And they didn't say much, but I answered my own question,
We're
no.
supposed to do this every so many years.
Yeah.
They need a recording secretary.
And not only that,
I mean, come on here.
everybody turns to the charter to answer questions. Like a question came up now that on the Board of Finance, Cindy Herms is going to one of the Carolinas, already left, and so we have to replace a person on the Board of Finance. And the question came up, how do we do that? And I don't know. I'll have to read the charter to find out.
It's in the statute.
In the state statute, so that it's in the state statute. I think the charter just says if it's appointed by the board, then the board gets to appoint it again, or the board of selectmen. So you have to turn to the charter, and oftentimes you'll find that our charter will be argued in court between between lawyers, and they have to look at the charter and decide the intent of the paragraphs and things. And so to have considerations recorded when the charter is changed is very important. So really, it's too bad, but it is
What are
what
they
it
supposed
is.
to do about recording secretary?
I don't know. It was just last night I found out that they're not funded, so
Pass the hat?
could be. Certainly we'll get an audio recorder and transcribe from that. I think it's important that all motions be recorded and any vote be recorded. That's critical. So we'll see.
That don't sound right to me. If we're supposed to every so many years go through this charter revision, then this town is obligated to give them a recording secretary.
Why is that?
And like Charlie said, it sounded like the same to me. It was all personal things, not anything to do with the government here. And what do you mean, why is that? They need a recording secretary.
Bob's correct. They just need to record the votes, the motions and the votes. That's all they're required to do.
You know, I mean, we can't come up with a lousy $1,000 or whatever it was. Come on.
Well,
There's
I
some
just...
kind of a grudge thing going on here.
Could be, but it is what it is. I just want to call it to your attention, so we'll work with that. Okay, we'll go on to the next one. The next one is the Grace Episcopal Church. And at the last meeting, you authorized me to negotiate a sales price with on behalf of the town and submit it back to you. And I'll read an email that I received last week, and it's from Richard, the church's realtor, and it's to Lori, who was ours, or I'm working through. It's, Ms. Lori Gabriel, the Grace Parish will not have permission to tender offers until Friday, January 18th, 2019. The Episcopal Church bishops and standing committee will be voting at their meeting on January 17th. On January 18th, the representative of the Grace Church will be able to execute the contract. At this point, there are two valid offers: the Cornerstone Bible Church and the town of East Windsor. Due to the fact the seller's real estate agent has received two offers, the seller has requested both buyers to come up with their highest and best offer, no later than January 14th, 2019. So I had to give them the highest and best offer on January 14th, and I did. And the offer I gave them, I offered them $430,000. That's
Is that the list price?
The list price was $422,000. I went $8,000 above what they listed it for.
I would have given you a little more, but all right.
So that's where we are. So that's in there. So we'll see what they come back with in the next couple of days. But my question to you guys, if they do come back with it, do you want to accept it and go to a town meeting, or?
Because that's a real estate transaction and protected under the Freedom of Information statute, we should talk about that in executive session.
Okay, all right. Okay. Then, going on to the next item, discussion of the ordinance establishing a tax exemption for farm building. And what I did on last week, I went to the Agricultural Commission, and I wanted to hear what they had to say about hemp. And, well, but I learned some good stuff.
Correct me up.
Well, I didn't talk.
It just follows me as a conversation piece everywhere I go.
I'm sure it does. And what I learned was very interesting to me, because I don't know very much about agriculture, but what they said to me is that they need a broker. They say, if somebody comes to me and says, if you produce this, and I will give you so much at the end of your growing season. And they said, if somebody comes to me and says that, I'll grow it. If nobody comes to me and says that, I'm going to grow something else that I know I can sell. So that's interesting. And then another thing that Glenn Reichley actually said, he was talking about that he didn't know about what kind of soil that would be best for hemp to grow in, and he was saying the one thing you need to know is the root structure of the plant, and I guess corn has a different root structure than other grains, and so there's a lot to know, and I don't know it.
Hemp takes a sandy loam to grow.
A sandy
Loam.
So
It really takes dirt, though. It is actually a weed. It'll grow in it.
well, that's good. Okay, I don't know. So and a lot of people don't know. The farmers didn't know about hemp there, but they did want somebody to take their harvest, and if they had that, they grow.
I'm shocked that they didn't. Yeah, okay.
All right, well, yeah.
From what I read.
Okay. But they also gave me this ordinance for tax exemption from farm buildings, and we worked on this almost a year ago, and we never brought it into fruition. So what I'm going to do, I've given it to you. I'm going to take it to the assessor and have an attorney read it over, and I'll bring it to you at the next meeting. And in the interim, if you want me to change anything or you're uncomfortable with anything, let me know.
And this mirrors the Ellingtons, right?
It does. The only thing that was changed is the building. It says that the amount not to exceed $150,000. They put that in. The Ellington said $100,000. So they're asking for a little bit bigger deduction. But other than that, it's exactly the same.
The questions I had, Bob, were there are two $15,000 numbers in there
Yes.
that deal with gross sales and expenses. They seem like very low numbers. You don't have to be much of a farmer to have gross sales of $15,000. if I read it right. And we're willing to, to give substantial amounts of tax relief because, a person that raised 15 or grosses $15,000 in sales. My God, a long time ago when I first got out of college, I bought about 15, 20 acres next to my dad's house, and it was tobacco land. Hell, I could have grown watermelons and being facetious, and almost grossed $15,000. It just seems like a low number to me.
And that may be true.
I'm gonna take a different perspective from Andy. I thought, I also flagged that $15,000 number as kind of like random. But I thought that a better benchmark rather than any type of a gross sales would be whether or not they're filing a Schedule F.
Would be what?
Whether they're filing a Schedule F tax document. If they file a Schedule F tax document, that means that they are farming for profit.
Okay.
That means that they're a legitimate farming operation.
I feel better about that, frankly, than setting a number.
The number is arbitrary. I was
Yeah,
thinking about that. I can't figure out why 15,000 was picked, other than seems like a nice round number.
Yeah.
A Schedule F actually shows that they're serious about what they're doing. And that could mean that the gross sales, and to be fully honest, that could mean that the gross sales is less than 15,000. But it shows that they're actively
I
farming.
believe it's $2,000.
To get a Schedule F? But the point is, that's a tax document recognized by the state government. So if you're filing that, that means that you have a sales tax exemption for farm products.
But I believe that, the 15,000, that's what it is in Ellington. And I believe that that number's there because, somebody that says they have a horse farm, that it's for enjoyment, and they're not really a farm. And they would come under, under that schedule he's talking about if, you don't have the 15,000. I think you stay with 15,000.
Well, we could do with both. We could say,
No, they're mutually exclusive. If you have the 15,000, you're going to have the Schedule F.
oh, okay.
There's just no there's no real reason why you wouldn't.
People that are as a hobby.
I think Charlie's confusing the business aspect of farming. It depends on what the goal is here. Are we trying to preserve the farm business, or are we trying to support farming and agriculture? So PA 490, as an example, has no requirement for any type of income, whether it be gross sales or net sales, or net income. There is no requirement at all under PA 490 for there to be any type of revenue generation. If the objective here is to support farming and agriculture and preserve, the town's rural character, that's a different objective than if it's to support the mushroom farm that used to be in the industrial park. So you got to think about what your goal is. And my approach is more supportive of people who are in production agriculture. There you go. That's my speech.
But it would let somebody has a horse farm. And by doing that, they get the exemption.
Yep.
That's not really a farm, that's a hobby.
But it's a property that hasn't been subdivided, turned into a McMansion that's going to bring you 2.5 kids and a dog and a picket fence. So it becomes, effectively, it's property tax control. One of the things that they say that is a benefit for open space is that you're not building stuff on it. If you're not building stuff on it, you don't have a demand for service. So to keep it as what it is an encouragement for, it is lessening the demand on services provided by the town.
Do you want to up to 15,000?
No.
Well, Andy was thinking it might. You want to leave it the way it is?
It's just an arbitrary number. It's like
I prefer, frankly, to limit it to people who are really farmers.
So that would be the filing of
the
the
Schedule F.
Schedule F?
That's what it takes.
Yeah, and the distinction there, when you have the Schedule F, so you might qualify for PA 490 without filing a Schedule F. If you can meet the definitions of farming and agriculture, you can get the PA 490 tax break. The Schedule F shows that you actually are doing this in a for-profit way. You're selling a good you're producing. Or, you're boarding a horse on your farm that might belong to somebody else. But there is some sort of revenue being generated in that case, where it's not necessarily with 490.
Okay, well, do you want to, I'll put up.
I can move forward with it, though, we need to get.
All right, so I'll change it to a Schedule F tax document, and like I said, I'll have the assessor look at it, I'll have an attorney look at it, and bring it back next meeting.
Good.
Okay. All right. Next is the travel document. I put the definitions at the top and put the General Services Administration as the party. So I'll pass it out.
It was in our pack.
Okay. Then,
I have two other suggested changes. Well, one suggested change and a comment.
okay.
In the scope, it talks about the policy being for reimbursement of town officials and employees for travel expenses. I would suggest striking town officials and because this is particularly relevant to employees.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of agree
Town
with
officials is us. We don't get mileage. We shouldn't get mileage
All right.
reimbursement.
reimburse town employees.
I think that is more in line with what the intention of the policy is.
Yeah, I agree.
The second comment is under the fourth bullet, so to speak, under procedure. And we talk about, so it reads in full part, all mileage accrued on work-related business during the workday between arrival at an employee's official duty station and departure from an official duty station is reimbursable. What happens if the employee doesn't depart at the end of their working day from their official duty station? So for example, and I don't know if this happens, I'm making this up, but if you have Amanda on her way home, if she leaves at 4 o'clock, instead she leaves at 3:30 and she drops something off at the Public Works garage and heads home from there. That's mileage incurred as part of her assignments as assigned by you, but she's not actually departing from the day from her official duty station. So how do you handle that circumstance?
I don't know.
Right. What part of her, what part there is reimbursable if there is anything?
Well,
Isn't the answer simple though, isn't it? If the mileage is additive to what is the norm, that she would be paid for it as long as it's on company business?
I think you're right.
That would make sense, but that's not what it says.
Well, yeah, but maybe you could say that she departed from her duty station to go to wherever to drop something off and then went home. So there would be the subtraction of the mileage from where she left to go home. And she could say...
I understand your point, and I agree with the sentiment. I don't think that's what this says, though.
Okay. We can, then we'll change it.
All mileage accrued on work-related business during work day. I would almost end it right there. So, Andy, take a look at that. What if you ended that sentence right after where it says workday? So the full part would say, all mileage accrued on work-related business during the workday. The point you're trying, the point you're trying to get to is that employees are expected to commute on their own dime to work and travel home on their own dime from work.
Yeah.
And anything in between, if they're using their own vehicle, ought to be reimbursable on our dime.
Yes, I think you're right. I think if we put a period right there at the end during the workday.
You guys follow that?
Yeah.
Hmm?
Okay, well, I'll make those changes and we'll come, do you want to vote to approve it with those changes, or do you want, because we've been without this for a long time, so I could come back with a
Let's
new...
just vote on to approve it with the changes.
All right, okay. And you can make the motion, if you want.
I move to approve the mileage reimbursement with the changes as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next is budget workshops. And I listed the dates here, the dates are listed, Amy gave me this, and we have 9 workshops going from February 4th through February 21st. And then your next document is the capital improvement projects. And I thought this was interesting. They're numbered, and the one I'm looking at is this one here.
I had a question about that.
Okay.
Is the ID number a ranking, or is that just indicating its place on the list?
I think it's a ranking.
They are prioritized?
Yeah, because, well, if you go by
Yes?
yeah, if you go by the weight value, that's also ranking too, but they're the same sequence. So yeah, so we call the numbering ranking, and then you go down to number 9. Between number 9 and number 10, there's a cutoff, and that's where they come up with the $1,533,470 that they're asking for in the CIP this year. And I know that you guys had some questions last year about the project, and the reason we have a capital improvement committee is to advise us. So in addition to the scheduled dates that we have to go over the budget workshops, if there's any particular capital improvement project that's listed here that you'd like to drill down on outside of those budget workshops, let me know, and we can get Public Works or the police or...
What I'd like to suggest, and see if this works for everybody, is that when the various people come in, Public Works, the police department, whoever else, fire department, comes in, have them prepared to discuss in detail the request with backup. I think that's probably the most effective way to do it, rather than bring them through a couple of times. I sat in on a fair number of the CIP meetings until they got to prioritizing, and then it was just a matter of their methodology. But they didn't get much for backup information, and I'm not going to pick out any one particular one, but I would like to have someone be able to tell me, picking, police vehicles, what's the cost of those things? Why is it that? Why are we not buying one instead of 2.5? And on. I'm not picking on that one particularly, but I really think that the CIP did not have in-depth backup for this, as I listened anyway.
Were you just testing the air?
Yeah, well, that sheet, I'm not the chairman of that committee, but I happen to be on it now for quite a few years. The top of that, the first ones are ongoing and they're priority. So those were put on before we even started.
How far down, Dick?
I don't know. I don't have the sheet in front of me, Andy. There's a bunch on. I don't know if that one's, I've seen that one yet. No, that's entirely different than the ones I had. But basically, some of this is ongoing. If you had our regular spreadsheet.
I have one of those that...
The big one.
Yes,
Well, it's got all that.
but it wasn't the final one, because I stopped going
No,
by two
because
days.
ours doesn't look like that.
No, I have the one you're talking
That
about.
is the final one that you're looking at.
I think that is the final one, Dick. It's-
Yeah, I haven't had a copy of that one yet.
Yeah.
But what it comes down to is we had a lot of this backup information, Andy. It wasn't just one meeting.
But I sat in on,
Yeah, one.
probably, no,
Two?
I probably sat in on 4 of them.
We
did.
shared everything with you. But a lot of this is background, and we went down through, which is mostly needed. Why do we buy one? Why do we buy 2.5 cruisers? Well, that's an interesting one. Because one year we used to buy 3, the second year we buy 2, and then it would screw up the number on the CIP all the time. Because, whoa, what's the big changes? This way you got an even number that basically matches within a few dollars. That's why it was done. To make it simpler, make it smoother, and the treasurer really felt it was pretty
But
decent.
something as basic, Dick, as this, I'm gonna call tomorrow over the fire department and talk to either the chief or the deputy chief and ask them for a 3-year maintenance record on all the vehicles. I got a maintenance record on the vehicles last year on a one-year basis. Frankly, the maintenance on the older vehicles was no greater than a maintenance on the brand-new vehicle.
Probably less.
Maybe,
Because they're a lot simpler.
you know, well, yeah.
You don't have all that electronic do that.
My
This was
point
the
is,
reason the fire truck was recommended to rebuild it, because it's totally mechanical, there's no electronics on it.
my point
And
is,
that thing costs nothing to maintain.
my point is that if you've got a good old vehicle which is running, why do you want to replace it?
That's just what we did, the CIP.
Okay.
We're not replacing it.
I think Dick's right in terms of this chart.
Yeah.
You remember how I asked if they were ranked? I think the first 9 are ongoing things, and I think after 10,
There are
I think
things that are obligated for.
And we
Right.
rated everything, and then it ran out of money.
I think this is the chart that actually shows what the prioritization is.
Nothing is obligated.
Some of it we've already started paying for.
Somebody is obligated.
If you notice,
Says-
this chart,
Any
you
of the
said
first
it's the
10.
ranking.
I think this is the chart that actually shows.
I hear what you're saying, but it says FY '20 budget recommendations,
Mhm.
and, you know, like, this is in alphabetical order, the departments of,
Oh, yeah, you're right. But the weighting changes. So if you look, for example, the weighting distinction between number 9 and number 10,
that's true. That's true, that's a discrepancy, isn't it?
but it carries on after 10.
I think Patrick was right.
Why is there a subtotal here? When the weighting.
I don't know.
That's what they're recommending, Charlie, to this line.
Oh, no, even though this one, number 10, has a higher weight value that they put on it than the others.
Yep.
Yeah, number 11 has a higher one than number 8. And so there's, maybe,
I guess, Bob, I just plain have questions that I'd like to be able to ask somebody who is supposed to know.
you know, and I
Upon
agree.
further reflection, I agree with Andy.
Yeah,
Say it again.
I said upon further reflection, I agree with you.
I think I'll get the answers to this ranking right away.
We're obligated to already without even doing
Isn't
it.
Kathy coming?
Yeah,
done.
I'll do that for someone
It was
else,
done.
because she understands that chart a lot better than I
Yeah.
do.
I think she's on the calendar, isn't she? For CIP for your budget.
Yeah, she is.
I mean, she can explain that, I'm sure, right down to the letter.
Oh, I'm sure too, yeah.
I mean,
But, so what I would say though is, if you guys look at these, and there's like, and I will do, I'll ask the people, the public works and the police and assessor's office, if that's necessary, to come prepared to explain about these a little bit.
Yeah.
But if there's something on here that's really important to you, let me know, and I'll say focus on whatever, maintenance records of police vehicles or whatever,
Okay.
that they might not bring, just to make sure that they come prepared and know what we're looking for. And I will talk next meeting.
Well, are we gonna have the people, the requestors, come to the meetings when we're going through these?
What Andy was saying is, those budget meetings I talked about, the 7 budget meetings, the departments, like the Public Works Department, is coming to one of those budget meetings.
Yeah.
And when they come to the budget meeting, we could ask them about these CIP.
Okay. So you're gonna ask them or inform them that, you know, that there'll be questions and be prepared to answer any of the questions.
That's true.
Relative, because there's no
Yeah.
information here.
Yes, and I'd also say that if there's something that really concerns you, let me know, and I'll say,
Well, all of them, I guess.
yeah, but
Yeah.
maybe something will stand out to you, maybe not, but that's
Well,
fine, you know, I'll just
I
tell
mean, I'm
them.
just looking at it for the first time here.
Yeah.
As to what it is.
You know, as an example, and I don't want to beat this to death, because we should ask the right people, but on 5, you know, it says ongoing replacement for a vehicle, a couple $100,000. Does that mean that, and it's a dump truck apparently,
Yeah,
we're replacing looks like an older dump truck. Does that mean that we're allocating $200,000 in that year to buy it? Or is there money already, you know, as Dick was saying, that some of these down to 9 are really ongoing activities where we've invested some money. And I guess I would compare that then to the Broadbrook fire truck that they're looking for as a replacement. We're going to put $200,000, I guess, is what they're recommending, toward $1 million truck. And again, and I don't want to beat it tonight, but it just sounds like the wrong methodology. If you're going to buy a truck, you buy a truck. Who says that we're going to be able to buy the truck that they want to own for $1 million 5 years out? We don't know what the heck, what the cost of living is going to be, or what production costs are going to be, or any of that kind of stuff. It just doesn't make sense. And I don't even know if the truck that currently is in operation will last for 5 years. It's an old truck.
yeah, in the bottom of that, it does say, in the far right paragraph, it says CIP allocated $100,000 toward possible purchase or lease purchase, and then it says, in 2 or 3 years, bonding may be feasible for this vehicle. I don't know.
But you know,
They're thinking
you know,
about
Bob, and again, I should stop talking because it's consuming time. I'm the guy that said, is it possible to do a lease purchase?
Yeah.
Can we bond it? And I asked the fire chief in Broadbrook to go out and look at that. I said, you know, this is not a big deal. You should be able to go out and make some telephone calls in less than 2 or 3 days and get all the answers to this, so you can come to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance and say, you know, these are the options we have, and these are the risks the town is going to work under for a 5-year period if we don't do that. I'd be happy with that. I don't know if we need $1 million fire truck or not, but if it indeed is I think the truck they're replacing is like a 2000 or something like that. And it apparently has a double frame and it's got some rust in it and so on. Engine you can fix and, you know, and pumps you can fix and things like that. Rust's a bugger. You have a hell of a time fixing rust in a truck. That thing, I think they told me, carries something like 5,000 gallons of water or something like that. It's a huge amount of water. What is it?
1,500.
1,500, okay. That's a lot. That's a lot of weight.
And the life expectancy, Andy, of that truck is 25 years.
Huh?
The life expectancy of that truck is 25 years, which is why they're asking for the 200,000 for 5 years. That truck, they hope to milk that truck through till they get the $1 million.
You can't just walk in here and throw your $1
And that's what the top-
million, $2 on the board and expect you guys to fund it out of thin air. You got to plan for these things.
No, I understand that, Dick. But you got to have information that
But you
allows.
can't get information except current, Andy. The government could change the regulations completely on engines 3 times in 5 years. They do it every so often. The trucks that you could buy 4 or 5 years ago have a completely different emission package than the ones today. they've had to make the trucks higher and longer,
But,
and they've gone up significantly,
Yeah,
just
but you're-
on the emissions package.
but you're making my case, Dick, and that is that
But how do you know?
is a $200,000 investment every year for 5 years
Yeah,
a
but you
wise
didn't spend a
investment?
nickel of it, the town still has the 200,000. If they figure they need more, they don't have to buy the truck then and there. It's putting it in the savings account so that it doesn't knock the budget completely out of whack every year.
We know what it's doing, and all we want to do is understand the
Well, I think
details.
the best thing to do is get Kathy in here, and she has her charts, and she can give them to you. I'm sorry, if I'd known you were gonna do this, I would have brought the book. It's about that thick for the CIP, with all the backup information.
Well,
No,
that's-
it doesn't have the maintenance records in it. It does not have the maintenance records of the
Bob,
trucks.
what, you know what I'm looking, here's an example, okay? In number 5, Public Works, project name vehicle, project title, ongoing replacement of public works and parks, grounds, vehicles, plural, okay, and equipment. And it's $200,000. Okay, that is what was asked for, that's what they're recommending. And then you look over here, and it's 1996, 98 dump trucks among the 12 vehicles overdue for scheduled replacement, requesting replacement of a dump truck. That doesn't match up with the project title, okay? It's either a dump truck for public works, it's not for, you know, the grounds or park and rec. So, you know, you look at that, and it's $200,000, and the question I'd like to ask is, you know, what about outsourcing the work?
Bargaining unit constraints.
Well, I want to talk about outsourcing, okay? And that,
Yeah,
in
well,
fact, other towns do it,
Well, that's good,
you know?
and that's
Rather
what
than
you should,
spending $200,000 for a truck, what would it cost to outsource, you know, somebody with a snowplow to plow the roads? South Windsor does it, Ellington, all these towns do it.
They augment it, don't they? They bring on support crews.
Yeah,
But they don't, they haven't abolished the service.
that's right,
They supplement the service.
that's right.
Right.
That's what I'm saying here.
and what I'm saying
That's
is,
a different animal though, Joe.
Yeah, you're mixing.
Mhm.
That's a different animal. The town just can't keep up, they don't have enough crews to do the roads. That's why they hire subcontractors.
Right.
I know what it's about.
We're gonna starve
I know
them
what it's
with
about.
equipment.
Dump truck is certainly equipment for the park.
Don't you, right, I mean,
I know what it's about.
It's
but
ongoing replacement of equipment.
if you, Charlie, if you want to consider that, then when Public Works comes in, let me know. And I'll say that one question we have is outsourcing some of the work. And so he'll come prepared to answer that
Yeah,
question.
that's what I'm asking you now.
Okay.
So would you like a list of questions?
Perfect,
Okay,
yeah,
I can do that.
okay, all right.
So Charlie, what are you saying, then outsource it and get rid of some of the guys at the town
I'm
garage?
not saying to get rid of them, but,
I mean, we have a skeleton crew at town garage
oh, okay.
compared to these other towns around us. It's
Okay.
ridiculous. I work for South Windsor. I know what they got. They got probably 30 plow trucks, and they still hire us to help them plow the roads, you know?
But Steve, if through
We have no
attrition,
help here. We
through attrition, okay?
We run
To
on
spend
skeleton
$200,000 for a truck, that today, we only use these trucks, in my knowledge, is to plow the roads, sand the roads. Because they're not oiling the roads like they used to. There's, you know, it's pretty minimal use. So, you know, is it a
What's this have to
better,
do with workshops?
is it a better cost factor for the town to
The-
outsource this?
Because
And
it's
outsource
the
other
contents
things.
of the workshops I'm talking
Well,
about
I think
right
because
here.
we're such. we run
And
on
I
such a
also wondered
skeleton
if you
crew
wanted to
here.
have additional workshops just to deal with CIP.
We should progress that. Things are so fair, like the six-wheel dump truck, that would be used,
It seems to
in
be
the
more
parks and rec.
topic. This-
all right,
this-
they're raking the leaves,
budget
picking up the branches, the trees that
workshops.
get blown down,
We're
whatever.
debating aspects of
The
it.
10-wheel dump truck, that obviously would be with the road crew,
That's true, but at least,
you know?
But
You know,
but they're saying
like-
this is for one.
And you know, when we do sand, we still mix sand, so the town goes and they haul their own sand in with these trucks.
There's nothing. Maybe that should be outsourced to do that. Is that less expensive for the town?
But I think the whole point is, we just want better understanding.
Yeah,
We're
but,
supposed
and I think
to be acting in
your,
the best interest of the voters.
your list of questions would be helpful.
Yeah, I get it.
Okay. Now now we'll move on to 11D Wells Road. And what this, the buyer now for Wells Road has given us a counteroffer. And what we said that we want them to pay $2,000 plus the legal expenses that we estimated to be $1,250, so $1,350, $3,250. And before we were considering him buying it for $2,000 before that. So now he's counter-offered and said that he'll buy it for $500 plus up to $1,500 in legal fees. So,
No.
so do you want to go back and ask him for $2,500 and leave it at that, or just not deal with him?
I wouldn't deal with it.
So that's your opinion.
You should basically pay for everything.
Okay. Well, I think
He's getting the land, he's getting it for nothing, basically.
yeah.
But so here's
He
the,
wants it to go with his property.
Yeah.
Then he should pay for everything. He's talking peanuts here.
Well, $2,500 would pay for the lawyer and give us some on the side.
but here's what our
We
objective,
just want to get rid of the land and get it on the tax
yes,
list here.
I'm with Steve.
So if we break even, that's good enough for me.
All right.
Because the whole point is that we own the property right now. We derive $0 for that right now.
Right.
It's also a scrap piece that we can't actually do anything with.
Absolutely.
So if we sell it, if we can get rid of it to the guy and incur no cost doing it, and then tax them for it, we're in the good a year from now.
I agree with you.
What would be the tax on it?
Not very much. But
Yeah,
More than
the
zero.
liability is off of us. Right now, we own it, we're liable if someone goes on there and gets hurt.
I agree with Steve.
So get rid of it at cost, break even, let him have it, and get rid of it and stop talking about it.
fair enough.
I agree. You know, what do we want the damn thing for? Let's just plain make sure we break even on it.
Yeah.
And
Well, we'll go back to our original thing. We'll give it to him for $2,000.
Yeah, $500 for us, $15 for the closing costs.
All right.
1,500,
So we'll
What
give
is
him,
15.
Yeah.
That's a good deal.
There's an email.
all right. So I move that we counteroffer him and say he can have the property for $2,000. Is there a second?
Wait. That's different from what we just said.
I know it is. What I've done is, he says up to $1,500 and $500 plus the attorney's fees of up to $1,500. I say, let's just simplify it and say give us $2,000, it's yours.
But that's not what, that doesn't do anything about the attorney's fees.
Well, we have to pay the attorney's fees out of the $2,000.
Oh, with the seller, right, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yep.
Okay. So I move we offer the buyer, offer to sell the 132 Wells Road to the buyer for $2,000.
second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Opposed? All right, motion passes. And approval of tax refunds. You want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to return the collector taxes to the participants on this page for the amount of $6,739.42.
Second.
All right, any discussion?
I'd still like to see my name on this list someday.
Taken into account. Overpay your taxes sometime.
Touche.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, Now, Selectmen reports. Charlie, you're up.
Okay. Last week, Andy and I had met with Broadbrook Fire Department and to talk about the possibility of having a single fire district for the town, and presented the things that we've seen and met with the people in Barkhamsted, which they have 3 fire companies under the one district there. And I went through all of that, and Keith Yagloff was also there as a town attorney. And we talked about it, and the purpose of their meeting was solely this, and that to decide by voting, the fire department members voting, to see whether they were in favor of pursuing this opportunity to make it one fire district. And so we did that, we left, and I got a call later that night that they did vote to authorize to have a pursuit of this. So there's more work to be done on it. And we had another meeting this week with them, and Warehouse Point fire people were there from the commission, as well as the officers, the chief and the deputy chief. And there's an agreement that the 2 entities, the fire commission from Warehouse Point and the chief and deputy chief are going to meet together with the chief and deputy chief at Broadbrook and the board of directors of Broadbrook. And that meeting is scheduled, I think, for the 23rd to discuss the bylaws and to see if they can come to some agreement with bylaws. Because their issue is about having equalness in terms of what the bylaws are going to be, that they have things that will apply to some, won't apply to the other. They want to work that out. So they're going to meet every 2 weeks, I believe, and they'll alternate sites of where that's going to be. And so we're, just told them that we'll support them in whatever they want to do. Ian, you have more to add to that?
Just that I was really encouraged by that. They wanted to do it themselves. They're the right people to do it. Charlie and I had offered to help to mediate or to work with them on it, and they didn't want our help. And I think that's a really good sign. I was happy about that. I thought the meeting a couple of nights ago was a good meeting. There was plenty of discussion. People had the opportunity to say what they wanted to say, and the final judgment was that they would go work the problem. The one thing we did establish was a target end date of mid-September to have all of this thing done so that it could be taken to the voters after that point in time. The people on the Broadbrook side have to vote as to whether they want to become part of a single fire district. So things are moving, and I was encouraged. I have no idea what the outcome will be when the people on the east side of town vote, but it's encouraging that the fire departments want to do it themselves.
Yeah, felt pretty good about it, so we'll see how they go, but I'll certainly be in touch with both the chiefs and the commission to see how they're progressing with that.
Okay. Steve?
Moving right along, Andy, go ahead.
There was no meeting, no report.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, there won't be a meeting on Monday, will there, Bob? Because it's Martin Luther King's birthday.
It's true. Now, is there one scheduled for?
It should be this coming Monday, but I'm sure it gets delayed at least does it get delayed a week? Is that it?
I suspect it would be
I
the
would
following
guess so.
Monday.
Yeah. So no report, and they will not meet as scheduled next week. It'll have to be the week after.
Okay, Jason.
Last night, the pension board had our quarterly meeting. I was very glad to nominate David King to serve as the new chairman of that board. I've known David a long time, and I'm very glad to have somebody with his financial expertise and training willing to lead a group that handles such technical financial matters. Later in that meeting, the board reviewed pension plan performance. Not surprising to anybody who follows market performance, the fourth quarter of 2018 was brutal. The S&P ended the year down 4.38%, which was its worst in a decade. Some of the conditions driving the market correction included increasing interest rates, political conditions in Washington, D.C., earnings targets, and the ongoing trade war with China. If we simply had an S&P index fund over the quarter, as some have suggested, we would have lost a staggering 14% of the fund value, which I think underscores the value that active management of the fund brings to the town and to our employees. Later that night, the Board of Finance met, and the board registered, as Bob pointed out earlier, their dissatisfaction with the members appointed to the Charter Revision Commission and the process used by that commission to date. The Board of Finance members took exception with the lack of diversity of opinion throughout the charter revision process so far, and the registered concerns about what that would mean for the end product. And then I also talk about the Fire District Commission meeting on Tuesday night, but that's been covered, so I'll skip it.
Okay, good, and I have nothing to report. So, public participation, anybody? Yes?
Just a clarification, did I understand that Attorney Ugoloff was paid to attend that meeting that the two selectmen went to at the fire station?
I believe so.
Why would we pay an attorney for that type of a meeting?
I was there, so it was 3 selectmen
I was there too.
and 4 selectmen.
And then why would we pay an attorney to be there for an ad hoc meeting?
For a what?
You're just there to discuss goals. Why are we paying an attorney?
Because and he won't be at the other meetings of the Broadbrook Fire Department, or the fire departments, but at that one, there were some questions that would need a legal advice, and what that would be how the state statutes handle the expansion of a fire district, and the Warehouse Point Fire District was established in 1911 by the state legislature by resolution, and they're quite restricted in what they do under that the rules of that resolution. But now, and I don't know the exact date, but I guess 1985 or something, that state statute said if you want to somehow, and you need, Keith would have to answer that, but change from the resolution that you're under and just say you're going to follow the state statutes, that's legal to do.
But wouldn't that be under the preview of Warehouse Point Fire Department? It's their charter, it's their district, and it would be their concern, and if they felt that there was a need, they get an attorney, wouldn't they be responsible for that? And not that I want to have an additional expense, but I'm just wondering why we're paying an attorney to be someplace where it's not his, he has no control over what Warehouse Point does.
This wasn't a Warehouse Point meeting. It was actually held in the Broadbrook
But you just
Fire
said it
Department.
because of the way the paperwork was written, but that's their responsibility.
What we're trying to do is establish fire protection for the town of East
I
Windsor.
understand that.
And to do that, we want to see one fire
I understand
department. And in that, there's many ways to get there. And so this discussion really involves the entire town. It doesn't just involve Warehouse Point at all. So that's why he was there.
And what is his determination as to where we should go if he was there acting on our behalf?
He was there to answer questions, any legal questions that would come up.
Marie, there are legal issues that come up when trying to convert, the Warehouse Point.
And I understand that we haven't got that far yet.
Oh, but we are there. But they're going to start next week and what Bob and Keith have offered to do is to get copies of the Warehouse Point bylaws, Broadwood bylaws, and other towns, and give them to the group. And Keith was very valuable in all the meetings I've attended, which are
I'm
all.
sure Jim Barton, I'm sure Jim Barton needed the bylaws and not copies. But I get the drift of what you're saying.
My only point is,
I don't have to agree with it.
I think that it's important to have, Keith has done a lot of study in looking at other departments, other fire districts. He has been a very valuable tool in trying to pull this together. And I was really happy when the fire departments decided to kick Charlie and I out and do it themselves, but invited Keith to sit in as kind of a rules guy to make sure that what they wrote was going to be properly written and that it was going to be legal. And I think that it's important to have a person like that there. It's got to be done at some point in time. And I think as you go along, better off to do it in situ as opposed to doing it at the end, or you've got a whole lot of rewriting to do.
Any further public participation? Noreen?
Yeah, hi, Noreen Farmer, South Water Street. And I wasn't going to participate with that whole charter revision, not the charter revision, CIP thing. I understand that there's a lot of things to be concerned about for Board of Selectmen in the end of it, but from my previous experience, I was on CIP for many years, and then with the Board of Finance I was on it as well. You bring together a vast group of people in order to do your capital improvement, and they take the time out of their schedule to sit and listen to everybody who comes and presents, and they ask the questions, and they discuss it with them, and they listen to why this truck or why the 200,000, how long do we think, and they spend a tremendous amount of time to come to a conclusion that they believe is in their best interest, in the best interest of the town. And then, unless things have changed, my understanding was always you had your own workshop with CIP, because it's a very important thing that they come and present to you what they did and why they got to what they got to. And because they're appointed to it, you all should have the faith in them to know that they're coming to you having done their due diligence. And from what I'm hearing, it seems like everybody's running all over everybody else trying to figure out who's doing what and when are they doing it. And if that's the point, I think it's a little discouraging to the volunteers that you get who put in tremendous amounts of time and take their job seriously. So, I mean, unless things have changed, I think it's great that you want to be involved, but I think you got to kind of let people do what they're supposed to do and follow the process to get it to you. And then you do what you do with it, and then you go to the Board of Finance based upon what you decided to do with the CIP that everybody else worked on. So from just listening to it, if I were on a committee like that, I would not be real happy that the work that I put in seems to be getting dissed as, well, they didn't take the time, they didn't put in, they didn't ask the questions. And I think you need to realize that they did, and that if you're concerned that it's not happening, then it should be a guarantee that somebody from the Board of Selectmen is at every one of those meetings, getting the same information, so that it proceeds in a much more harmonious manner.
Noreen, could I just answer some of that? Last year was my first year on the board, and I chose not to go to the CIP meetings because I was afraid I was going to be disrupted by asking questions. The bottom line is that I found out as time goes on that except for during the public comments portion, questions are not allowed. So I went to Kathy Simonelli after the last year. Sarah Muska recommended that I go, and it was all over by that time, and I didn't go. So, but I did tell Sarah in writing that I would go this year, and I did. And in spite of the fact that Dick didn't see me there, I was there like 3 out of 4 times when they were talking about the projects. I sat in one of the sessions where they were ranking them, but that was very, I understood the methodology and that was fine. There's a sheet now. I asked Kathy how she wanted me to try to get at questions without disrupting her committee. And she said, submit them in writing. So I submitted them in writing, and then a couple of weeks later, I went to her and I said, do you have answers? And her answer was, okay. She said, I really don't have the time or the resources to answer your questions. So I stopped writing questions to her.
And, you know, I wasn't there, Andy, so I'm not sure. But
No, I understand. I just want to explain, because I'm probably the guy that questioned more than anybody else. But I see it as my responsibility as a board member to understand what I pass on to the Board of Finance. I want to understand.
Oh, I fully support that.
And what so at this point in time, I accept the fact that what the board of the CIP did was good. You know, it's good. It's just that I have additional questions, and I think Bob has part of a solution. What we'll do is we'll give him our questions on the CIP spreadsheet, and let him ask the people who are coming in, the police department, the parks department, you know, works and so on, to try to come prepared to answer those questions. I just think, in my mind, you know, in my training for 50 years in business, was that if I was one of the people who signed off on something, I'd better damn right well know what I'm signing off on. And that's all I'm trying to do. That's really all I'm trying to do. And I am not knocking what those people did.
Anything different, and maybe things have changed, Andy, but from when we did it, it was CIP had representatives of a vast amount of boards. There was a finance, a fire, they were from every place. And people came and said, this is what I want on the CIP, and you sat there and you went through it, and you did we asked the questions of Lenny Norton. Well, why does the water sucking truck need to have that replaced, and why is that more important than a dump truck or whatever? And then that came from CIP to you. But there was always somebody from the Board of Selectmen at those meetings. So, I mean, and unless it's all changed, I can't imagine that CIP is going to come to a workshop with you and not be prepared to explain or quantify or weight or do whatever. You know what I mean? It just, sitting here back here, I was getting the impression that the people who put the hard work into that whole process may deem it to seem like it was a waste of their time, because what they learned and what they gleaned and what they decided in their interpretation from talking to everybody who put on that list is being kind of just like, well, that's great, you did that, but now we want to talk about maintenance records for 3 years and all of that. I'm just afraid that the way it may come across can be very discouraging to people who are volunteering a lot of time and have, hopefully, the experience to be on that CIP. Because it is an important thing. It's a lot of money, it's big ticket projects. But, you know, I don't want it to seem like it's just kind of a willy-nilly thing and they all sat together and decided to throw this thing in front of you and then aren't going to show up and explain it all and do all of that. And I think that maybe, and I don't want to speak for Kathy Simonelli, but when I was the chair of the CIP, my answer would have been as well, I don't have time, we're not ready to do that right now. That's why we have a workshop. We come to you with our findings, with our weightings, with our everything. And if you don't have a separate workshop set up with CIP, I think you need to. There should be a workshop that's only about CIP, because the police department went and talked to CIP. They should have got that straightened out. They should have weighted it in there. They should have decided. Because when you have your budget meeting with the police department, there are so many things you need to be talking about in just their operating budget, that the reason their capital improvement is over here is because that's where it gets hashed out, not in their budget presentation to you about Do they need another cop? Do they need more overtime? Do they, you know what I mean? It just seems that people are running all over each other and not necessarily trusting that the other ones are doing what they're doing. And I think you need to give people more encouragement.
I want to make it clear,
discouragement.
I'm not at all denigrating what the people on the CIP did. I just, that's not my bag. My bag is that I would like to understand
Correct.
what I signed for.
Right.
And Charlie and I are new members of the board, and we sat in on a large number of the CIP meetings. You said we should have sat in. We did. We sat in. I listened. I think I missed one, and then I went to one of the meetings where they're deliberating and prioritizing, and I didn't really care about that. I was really more interested in information than I was in how they were going to prioritize. So, but I'm not knocking how they do it or what they did.
I'm just trying to say what it appears, so, like during your conversations, it begins to appear very negatively. And I know people put in a lot of work. I spent many, many years putting in exceptional amounts of hours, and the worst thing you can do is make people think that they didn't do what you wanted, what they were expected to do, agree with it, disagree with it, whatever it may be. So that was it. And you know, and again, I'm sure you went. I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't do that anymore. But again, it's just the way it comes across. So that's all.
Thank you, Noreen, very
Thank you.
well put.
It's a nail in the
Thank
head.
you, that felt good.
Okay, and I'll say thank you also, Noreen, and I listened. Maybe we should have a board of selectmen member on the CIP.
I don't know why you don't.
Tom?
Well, no, and you know, you're always welcome to participate.
Yeah.
It wasn't a visit, it was flip through the book after your, but I don't do this anymore. That was all.
You should do it again. Go ahead, Tom.
My comment is on the same lines as Maureen. I mean, everybody does their due diligence. You have professional people in those departments. They're telling you what they need. I just think it's just like you're micromanaging what they're telling you. They need, okay, we need tires. Well, geez, how many tires do you need? You don't need to ask those questions. They know what they need. That's why you hire these people. You pay them a lot of money. You got to have faith in the people that are coming to you. And that's just my comment. That's all I have to say. And people do a lot of work on these committees.
And I have to say, I'm really impressed with what Kathy Seminelli's done. She's really leading it and giving us good information. So I'm going to call it Jim, because he had his hand up.
Jim Barton, 108 Main Street, Warehouse Point. Just, I'm also a fire chief in Warehouse Point. Just to, a couple things on your question. I think Keith was there mostly last night to answer some questions on the town on how they were gonna remove the funding, the current Broadbrook Fire Department funding, if they switched to a district, and he came up with some ideas about an ordinance, so in order to make, so people are over here aren't getting double taxed on it. And I think that's the major reason why he was there last night. Also to put a little guidance on it, but we've been through this with our district attorney already, so we know how the expansion is going to go. I don't feel the need that the town needs to pay an attorney to sit there and make up bylaws for us when we're all going to be sitting there. We're the guys that know the bylaws. We're going to be sitting there for free. If we're going to pay him, let's let him make the bylaws.
Right.
And we'll sit back and we'll review them after. But I think maybe bring him in at the end and either look it over at that point. But I don't think he's going to need to sit in at the meetings with us.
Jim, I think he said that it isn't up to attorneys to make bylaws.
Right.
Attorneys don't do that.
Well, that's my point.
And so he is not at all intending that he has a position to be doing.
Right, but that's my point. I don't want to incur another expense that I don't think is necessary for legal.
Yeah, and hearing what you said, I didn't know whether he was even going to your meeting or not, but I'll ask him not to.
And why not? You're the CEO of the town, you should know when we're hiring an attorney. Somebody shouldn't be.
Well, let me write that down. I'm the CEO of this town, and I should know.
You're the select person.
I'm just writing it down.
You know, you're
I'm the
in charge of the
selectman.
town,
I'm the.
and you should be, and you should.
I can't, you're interfering with my writing. I got.
You know, you're the person in charge, they should be going to you, and you should be determining whether or not we should be paying for an attorney. You can't have people just randomly inviting people to meetings and paying them an hourly rate, because then we're gonna run out of money when we need an attorney. That's the point I'm making. You know.
No, I don't really understand the point you're making.
We have an attorney sit for how many hours?
For free?
How many hours, and you didn't even know you were paying an attorney to sit there?
I knew we were paying the attorney to
That's not
sit.
what you just said.
I didn't know the attorney was going to this meeting, and I didn't know that,
But you should, as a person in charge.
then
You should know that.
let me just say that I'm not going to run for re-election. It's too bad you were burdened with me for 4 years.
Okay.
Get a better guy next time.
We hope so. But
Sure.
look at this over here. It's been digging all night, nobody's paid any attention to it. The thing has been spinning around the middle. Is it even recording properly? And we're talking about construction. People that can't make meetings rely on that. And I don't know how many times.
I would encourage people who can't make meetings to fund that freaking thing. They don't. My budget's gonna go over, probably I'll have to transfer money from other places because I have to pay to fund that thing, to fix that thing. And even the only reason we got that thing is because when I first took office, there was $6,000 left in public outreach. And now I have no money in public outreach except for $2,000 to pay for the Board of Finance flyer. So I think well, I'll take that into account.
I think the speakers might need to be adjusted too.
Yeah, I noticed there was some.
There's a lot of echoes.
A lot of that.
Yeah.
It's getting late. Can we move on?
Yeah. Thank you, Marie. Okay, so I move we go into executive session. Take a 5-minute break and go into executive session. Is there a second?
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye.